This is Danny Flexon here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined by the WBO bantamweight champion Paul Butler. Having just watched, both of us having just watched Nonito Donaire, unfortunately for him, get absolutely destroyed in round two against Naoya Inoue in their highly anticipated rematch. Paul, what did you think of it?
I thought he was brilliant, mate. He'd obviously watched a lot of the last fight where Nonito troubled him a few times, but he's gone back. He's done his own work, and I personally thought he'd get him after 7 rounds. I thought he'd have a little look at him, but he nailed it at the end of the first round, and he's come out. He's come out the second round, and he's jumped all over him. And what a good champion does! He finished him.
It seemed like from the very start he was a bit sharper than Donaire. Donaire was quite ponderous, coming forward, probing with his jab, whereas Inoue seemed to get into his rhythm a lot quicker.
Yeah, I think he was going first and last. I think every time he threw that jab, he was giving him one jab quite often, one jab, waiting for that counter off Donaire, and he was going third then. And I think that's where the first knockdown comes from as well. He comes over with the right hand off Nonito, off Nonito's left hook, and what a shot it was. I think if there was a lot longer left in that round, I think he'd have done him in the first, but I don't think he recovered, and I think he jumped all over him.
He dropped him, as you said, at the end of the first round with that right hand. Got up, didn't look too bad when he rose, but we never really found out because the bell went. And then in the second round, it seems to be the left hook mostly that was doing the damage. So I suppose we have to say now he's very much a puncher with both hands.
Oh yeah, he is. He's frightening with both hands. I think the left hook what scrambled Nonito's legs. I think the ref should have jumped in then. I think he gave him too much of a chance. I think he was hurt previous to the left hook, and then that left hook landed, scrambles his legs, and I think the ref should jump in there. I think he's 39 now. I'm not saying he's done because he's still a very, very good fighter. He's in there with one of the best pound for pound, if not the best pound for pound fighter on the planet. And he's frightening with both hands. So I think you've got to save Donaire there.
From what you just said there, do we take it that it's more about how good Inoue is rather than how potentially faded Donaire may be?
Yeah, I think so. I think since the whole of the World Boxing Super Series, even the final against Inoue, I think that was still a good performance. And then he's had 2 wins, as I was talking to you about before. He's had 2 wins since that, um, and he's looked very good. So I do think it was how good Inoue is. How look at the size of him there tonight compared to the World Boxing Super Series 3 years ago. He looked massive tonight. He looked tiny against him the first time.
Do we think then, partly based on that, that he might be thinking about moving up now? It's been talked about for a while, him going up to Super Bantam, but he may have that desire to become undisputed, which would then involve you, of course.
I hope he does, mate. I hope he does want to try and be undisputed. It's a massive occasion for me. Probably a chance I'd never get to get again. And it'd be an absolute honour to step in the ring with a pound for pound great, and he will go down as a legend.
I think Donaire had said before the fight was reported that he'd be happy to make that undisputed fight should he win, which unfortunately for him didn't happen. If you get the chance to fight Inoue, would you have any issue with travelling? Because he's obviously a big draw at home in Japan.
Mate, I'd love to travel. I'd love to travel to Japan. It looked electric there. The undercard and that was quite quiet, and then as soon as he came out, it just lifted. It did look special out there. So I'd love to travel, mate. Traveling doesn't bother me. I've travelled all over the world as an amateur. Going into someone's back garden doesn't faze me. Like,
You said he looks amazing. You said his power was frightening. All great and respectful and everything else. But then how do you go about plotting to beat someone like that?
leave that down to Joe. Obviously, Joe will come up with a game plan. It'll be a tough task, but it's a task that I'm willing to take.
And 4 belts. I mean, back when you were bantamweight champion the first time round, and then obviously you lost it, it didn't go your way, didn't have a long reign. Could you ever have
Mm,
imagined you could now be on the precipice of not just an undisputed title fight, but against someone you consider perhaps the pound for pound best?
no, most definitely not. Even going back 2, 3 years ago, the start of COVID, I was 31. You're thinking, how long's this COVID going to last? But I'm here now. I'm world champion again. And we've got a great in the bantamweight division that holds every other belt bar mine. So I'd be daft not to want that fight.
What message would you send to Inoue regarding making that fight happen? And I'm not sure quite how good his comprehension of English is, but we'll give it a go.
No, he's never been undisputed, has he? And I think it'll take him a long time at super bantamweight as well. So if there's one chance to do it, then this is the time.
Do you think there's any chance we could tempt him over here?
Possibly. But I've been asked this question before: where would they want it, over here or over there? I'd like to go over there, but I'm not a fan of them masks and stuff, so I wouldn't mind it over here either.
Good stuff. Now, if it doesn't come about, say for the next fight, because we don't know what the plans are, he hasn't come through a grueling fight at least, so he could be ready to go again pretty soon. What would be next for you otherwise?
Probably a defence around about the October time. But my eyes are all set on that one. That there. If that could happen next for me, then I'd jump at it. But if not, if it was for the start of next year, then we'd have a defence in October.
Have you already been texting Joe back and forth while that fight was going on, kind of urging
No,
him to start?
not today, but I spoke to him yesterday about it. Yeah.
And is he keen to kind of get negotiations going?
Yeah. I think there might have been a chat or two already gone on, but we'll see what happens within probably the next week or so. Obviously, let him enjoy his victory, and I'm sure negotiations will start somewhere.
So just to kind of round off, when you watch a fight like that, and you're very impressed with him, does it kind of get your juices flowing? Even though a lot of fighters would watch and think, "God, I don't fancy any of him." Are you kind of excited by it?
Yeah, I was nervous watching that, hoping he'd get through that, because I know how dangerous Donaire is. But I was nervous, hoping that Inoue would get through it, because that's the fight I want. I'd be daft not to. Do you know what I mean? I've been in the sport 23, 24 years now. Why would I not want a boxer great like that in Japan? Be silly.
And do you think his style suits you better than Donaire, or have you not thought about which one?
I've not even thought, to be honest. People have asked me, and look, they're both bangers. They both punch. Donaire's been. I'd be silly not to say. I think out of the two, Donaire would be the better fight for me because of the age. The legs are a little bit slower than Inoue's. You're watching Inoue, he's very much like, like your GB fighters up on your toes, boom, boom, boom. But he's lightning with it as well. And every time he throws his shot, he plants his feet, boom, and he lets them go with big and hurtful intentions. Every time he throws a combination, he's finishing with a big one. Like, so I'd be daft not to say I'd like the more winnable fight for me is Donaire, but listen, the massive fight and the fight that sets you up for life is Inoue.
Any flaws there that perhaps the untrained eye wouldn't see?
Didn't see none, did you?
No, it only lasted a round and a half.
Yeah, true. No, every time I've seen him, there's been hardly any flaws. He might lift his chin up off a jab. If you watch him jab, he lifts his chin up a little tiny bit. But other than that, and I think that's the shot what Donaire caught him with in the first fight in the 9th round. He jabs, he lifts his chin up, he's over the top of it. That's the only flaw you're going to get with him, I think.
Fair enough. Well, a difficult task then, but one that you're happy to take, hopefully for October.
I don't think he'll be ready for October. If he is, then happy days. But if not, I don't mind waiting until he's ready.
Great stuff, mate. Really appreciate you joining us straight after the fight. I think we all enjoyed it for the short time it lasted, and hopefully it's you in the ring with him next time.
Fingers crossed, mate.
All right. Cheers, Paul. Take care.
Cheers, Dan.
Hi guys, I've been informed by our Ace production team that there was quite a lot of you still on the live stream after Paul Butler, WBO champion, departed, having given his reaction to the big rematch between Naoya Inoue and Nonito Donaire. So I thought I'd come back on, maybe go through some of your live chats as well while we're here. Idiot, we'll see if he lives up to that name, said Inoue beats Butler and Casimero on the same night. I've seen a lot of people in the build-up talking about Casimero. It should be noted that he's not the WBO champion anymore. He was stripped. And the reason he was stripped was because he was using saunas to help make the weight for his fight against Butler, which was scuppered by the British Boxing Board of Control, who've got a rule against doing so. But what that means more kind of generally speaking is that he's probably planning to move up, I would imagine now, to super bantamweight. So he might fight Inoue up there, of course, if Inoue also moves up. What else we got here? Casimero versus Inoue. Donaire should retire after the beating he took from Inoue, it says Jimmy Chin. I'm starting to doubt whether all of these are real names, funnily enough. But yeah, Donaire, it's interesting. What more can he achieve? He's already, a full world champion in 4 divisions, 39 years old now, had kind of a great Indian summer to his career by pushing, getting to the final, first of all, of the World Boxing Super Series, pushing Inoue hard in their first fight, and then regaining the WBC title against Nordine Bali. Still a very dangerous fighter, still a lot to offer. But at this stage, if he's got the money to retire, you'd probably think the people around him, particularly his wife, Rachel, would consider hanging the gloves up. What else we got here? Butler will get destroyed, says Tony Down Under. Listen, Butler will go into that fight as a huge underdog. There's no question about that. Nothing on his resume so far indicates that he'd be the man to beat the undefeated Inoue. But why be in the sport unless those are the sort of fights you're chasing? If you're in a division and you're a belt holder, and you've got someone else with the other 3 belts, if you can get an undisputed fight, until recently they were exceptionally rare in the 4-belt era. If you can nail that down and against one of the top fighters in the sport today, there's no point being in boxing unless you're chasing fights like that. So you can only admire Butler for wanting it. I don't think he's just after the payday. I'm sure the money, is a factor. But the idea of getting that glory, even just sharing a ring with someone of that caliber, if you're a true athlete, I guess it gets the juices flowing. Me sitting here with my beer belly, I couldn't tell you, but I'm sure that's how Paul Butler feels. Joe Mencho, Butler would probably kill Inoue. I don't know if he means that or if he's joking. Hi, mate. How are you? That's Umar Farouk from ITV. Nice guy. Inoue side, what do you make of Chisora versus Pulev? A little underwhelming, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. I don't think Total Carnage, if you've ever seen how Pulev fights, really is a good moniker for the event. I think it'll be a decent fight. I think it'll be competitive. But Pulev's been in some real stinkers. And his first fight with Chisora wasn't particularly thrilling either. So I don't think Total Carnage is really the way to go. I think for Chisora to be in that sort of fight, he needs to be opposed by someone who's hyper aggressive as well. And I don't think that's what Pulev is, particularly not at this stage of his career. He can certainly punch, but I don't think he's a kind of threshing machine or anything like that. So slightly disappointed, but hopefully, they've promised a huge undercard. Us already Hearn said that in the press release. So fingers crossed there's enough on there to make it worthwhile. And it's not pay-per-view. And you've got to believe in a year ago, Sky Sports box office, this would have been. So, I don't want to excuse it completely, but you've got to take the positives as well. Butler. Inoue is going to be undisputed. Yeah, I think, a lot of people probably agree with that. I'm confused with the 118 division, says Alan Panica. Isn't Casimero the WBO? Who is the Paul Butler dude? Forgive me, do not follow this division like that. I'm happy to help educate you, Alan Panica. Or I did say this earlier, but maybe you weren't on the live stream at the time. John Riel Casimero was due to defend against Paul Butler actually twice, 2 separate occasions, who Butler was his mandatory challenger. The first time he was ill on the week of the fight, Casimero, and was taken to hospital, and thus couldn't make the fight amid reports that he was struggling to make the weight. Second time around, I think it was in April, he was supposed to fight Butler then, but he was found to be using saunas to help make the weight, which is against British Boxing Board of Control regulations. So they said the fight couldn't happen. He couldn't offer an acceptable excuse or explanation to the WBO. So they stripped him, And Paul Butler fought a substitute opponent in Jonas Sultan, who actually owns a win over Casimero way back when, and outpointed Sultan. Very good performance, actually, by Butler, and won the interim title, which was soon upgraded by the WBO to full champion. Casimero, we expect now to move up to super bantamweight, but he is indeed a factor at bantam if he can still make the weight safely. Bobby Enriquez, Butler is a fake champion. I don't think you can say that. I mean, you just said it, so you can. But I think you should say it because, you know, he did what was asked of him. It's not his fault that Casimero flunked the rules. They would have been well aware of the Board of Control's rules. I know Butler was, because he fell foul of those exact same rules several years before when he used the sauna to make weight, albeit for a less important fight. So you break the rules, you take the consequences. And it wasn't the first time he pulled out. You know, mandatory challenges are there for a reason. Inoue beats Butler and Casimero in the same night with a combined time of less than 3 rounds. Okay. Be realistic, Butler has no chance. Inoue will be an easy fight for Casimero. Oh, I've got some Casimero fans in the chat. Butler paper champ. I think that's harsh again. He had to beat someone to win the title. If Casimero had vacated the belt, Butler would have had to fight Sultan for the vacant title. So it's not that much different. It's just the fact that he was stripped people don't like, but there was a reason for it. Butler beats Monster inside too, says Joe Mencho. I'm not even sure Paul Butler would agree with that prediction, Joe, but it's good that he's got someone so behind him in this case. Well, it was really interesting that Butler was so keen to go over to Japan rather than tempt Inoue over here. Maybe some of that's down to, you know, realism. What's more likely to happen? Inoue, you know, it's unlikely you're going to tempt him over to Liverpool to fight Butler. But I think it's interesting that Butler is really excited to go over to Japan. He's had a look at the event today on Top Rank's YouTube stream, which we're very grateful for here in the UK, able to watch the fight. And he's probably thought, it looks amazing, you know, everything, the entrances, the build-up, the TV montages, it all looks great. And what a great thing to tell your kids about and your grandkids in however many years' time that, you know, you fought a pound-for-pound contender for the undisputed world title at a mega event in Japan. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. Kuki Zorro, Butler never won the title. He's only elevated to be a full champion. Yeah, I've explained that twice now on this live stream. But he did have to win the interim title against Jonas Sultan. He wasn't just handed it. And then he was upgraded when Casimero's reasons for using saunas to help make the weight were kind of ruled out by the WBO. They weren't accepted. If Inoue wants to be undisputed, he'll go anywhere, says Jimmy Chin. Yeah, he will, but who's the draw in the fight? You know, I think even Butler would concede that Inoue packs out the venues in Japan more so than Butler does here. I think Butler's keen to go to Japan. I think he'll get more money for going to Japan than if Inoue was tempted over. You'd have to do your entire budget just to bring Inoue here. It makes far more sense financially for Butler to travel. Joe Mencho, Butler Hall of Fame. All right, we get it, Joe. You're either being very ironic or you love Paul Butler. Either way, we understand. Reginald Alojado, perhaps. I'm not Gareth A. Davis. I don't do the Spanish accent as well. Kudos to Inoue. Salute to Donaire. It's time to hang your gloves. You have nothing to prove in boxing. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier on the live stream. 39 years old, 4-weight world champion, great, loving family. What more has he got to prove? I think it probably is time for him to back out. Dennis Rodman, wow, got a basketball legend in the chat. I think that might not be him. Inoue and Butler, fake champion made in China. Okay, brilliant. Not sure what that's got to do with anything. Butler have no amazing fight, so why would we watch the fight between him and Inoue? We'd prefer Casimero versus Inoue fight, 1 Marcos 31. Well, 1 Marcos, you know, it depends what weight Inoue wants to campaign at and whether Casimero can still make 118 pounds safely. If he can't, then Butler's the last missing piece in the jigsaw for Inoue to become undisputed. So the attraction for a Butler fight for Inoue is clear to see. What is it? Why would he fight Casimero? He'd have to potentially move up when he might not be ready to do that yet, and for no title as well. What's the attraction there? And that's the same to you, Dennis Rodman. Inoue ducking Casimero, exactly the same point. Butler didn't earn his title, says Alpha Man. He's never a threat. Inoue or Casimero just walked to him. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Has he got the pop, the power to keep them off? He's a very talented boxer, though. Good lateral movement, you know, great upper body movement, agility as well. Very good defensively. And he can punch a bit himself. He's obviously not a puncher in the Inoue or Donaire mold, and he doesn't claim to be. But, you know, I'm not averse to seeing that fight, if I'm honest. What chance did you think Butler have against Inoue? I'd make Inoue a strong favourite, as I would against any bantamweight in the world today. But I think Butler's earned his chance. He's WBO champion. He's got something Inoue wants, in the same way that, you know, Caleb Plant had earned his shot at Canelo Alvarez. You've got that last missing piece of the jigsaw. You've made yourself a commodity as a result. You deserve your chance. And I think what I will say is that Paul Butler will go in full of confidence. Joe Gallagher, his trainer, will have a game plan that he really believes in. And I think they'll go over there and he will give his absolute all to win the fight. I would make Inoue a heavy favourite. I'm not going to lie. I'm good friends with Butler, but I'm not going to let that jade my view. Anyone who watched, you know, Inoue's last few fights and Butler's last few fights would come to the same conclusion. But he will give it absolutely everything. He'll have a good game plan. And I'm not averse to watching it. I'd like to see the fight. We all know that your country made a way for your Butler to rob Casimiro's belt. Larry, he's not my Butler. I don't have a Butler. I'm a lower class, working class. I don't have a butler. I don't have a maid. I don't have a housekeeper. But I do like Paul Butler, but I don't think the Board of Control robbed him. I think what you'll find is that the Board of Control were alerted to Casimiro's use of sauna, which was in a video actually put out by his own team, by other means, and certainly not from Butler's camp or from anyone in the UK. And that's all I can say about that. Does Inoue fight in the US? Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility as well. Inoue gets Paul Butler out in America, kind of semi-neutral territory. But is it as big an attraction there as it would be in Japan? Does it make as much money? I'm not so sure. You're not going to beat Bruce Lee, fam, yet. Thanks for that, Oz Smoke. Titik O says, agree with you, 100. Inoue is on a different level. There is no way Inoue loses to Casimiro. Inoue will knock him out in 3 rounds or less, says Takumi Yamani. I just don't see that fight happening next. You know, if Inoue moves up and wants to have a first fight at 122 pounds super bantam, it's not going to be against someone as dangerous as Casimiro. And I don't see Casimiro making 118 again. Inoue always seems to get stronger the more he fights, says Mr. Grandy. Yeah, I mean, I think he is improving all the time. I think he started off kind of in the deep end when you're at those lower weight classes where he won his first world title, which I think was light flyweight. There's not a lot of depth necessarily in those divisions, and you can be moved very quickly towards a world title. So we've been fighting at a higher level with a lot of scrutiny on him, a lot of people interested in him from a very young age. He's now 29. He's probably around his physical peak. He's got his man strength, which people go on about quite a lot. I never got mine. And he's powerful. We've known that all along, but the little nuances that go with it, the way he moves, the way he moves around the ring, like his footwork, his head movement, they've all improved as well. And he's filled into the weight a lot more as well. I think, as Paul Butler pointed out in the live chat earlier, he looked a different physical specimen from the first time around with Donaire, 2.5 years ago now. So, yeah, he's broadened into that weight, little skills and nuances there. And he's going to be a very, very hard man to beat. I mean, how far up does he need to go before he's beaten by someone who might not necessarily be better, but is bigger? You know, super bantam's a tough division at the moment, but would you back Stephen Fulton or MJ or any of those top fighters at super bantam against him? You know, I'm not sure I would. MJ being Akhmadaliev, of course. So, yeah, I mean, he might have to go all the way to featherweight before you'd back against him, or before the bookies would have him as not the favourite going into a fight. As In My Opinion says, no 118 can stand that check hook and Inoue power. Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with that. Bobby Enriquez, God, he won't leave this. He's like, dog with a bone, Bobby. What is your prediction if Casimiro versus Inoue fight? My prediction is Inoue wins still. Sorry, I know you're obviously a Casimiro fan, and so am I. I really like Casimiro. I've met him once before the Zolani Tete fight. I thought he was a great guy. But I don't think he always lives the life outside the ring, from what I've been told. I think Inoue's ultra professional and he's clinical. I think Casimiro is a little bit more wild, very skillful, very powerful. But I think Inoue's just got that bit more about him. I think he might be a bit bigger at this stage now as well, even though it's Casimiro struggling with the weight for the world to see. I just think he's got a bit too much in most departments. But again, it's a fight I'd really like to see. Could Inoue handle Warrington's pressure, says Sporty Sport? Yeah, I mean, that is up at featherweight. That is an interesting one. Josh Warrington, very physically strong, but, you know, he's vulnerable himself. We've seen him hurt against Maurizio Lara, of course, and, you know, he wasn't necessarily switched on as he should have been for that fight. It's whether, a lot of it depends on whether Inoue will carry his power up. He has so far, from light flight all the way to bantam, but those kind of gaps in weights at the, you know, up to bantam are quite small. Once you go from bantam at 118 to feather, which is what, 126, that's an 8 pound difference if he makes it up that far. Will he still be the power puncher that he was, or that he is rather, at bantam? If he is, then he's still a very dangerous fight for Josh Warrington. But the idea of having a pressure fighter who's got those natural physical advantage over him, that may be the only way he gets beat, is by going up in weight too far. But that's an interesting fight as well. Casemiro had the opposite. This is I like BBW. Don't we all? Don't we all? Anthony Joshua does, apparently. Casemiro had the opportunity before to make weight and said he was ill. Butler had to fight someone else. Hope Butler pulls the magic and earned a real payday. Good luck, lad. Yeah, I think that's how most people feel about it. You know, that's the way it worked out. Circumstances beyond his control. But if Paul Butler can benefit from it, you know, he's a 2-time world champion. He's a good guy. He trains amateurs at his local club. He's just an all-around nice fella. And we certainly in the UK would like to get behind him and see him fulfill his dreams. Why not? Who else? Kyan's point. Easy win for Inoue if Casemiro, not catch weight 118, but Inoue evade Casemiro. Why? I'm not saying he'd avoid Casemiro, but I'm saying Casemiro hasn't got something to offer Inoue, whereas Paul Butler has. He's got that WBO title. If Casemiro still had the WBO title, I think that would be the fight that would be number one on Inoue's target list. You know, he's not looking for a particular opponent. There's no grudge here. I think he just wants the final piece of the jigsaw so he can claim to be undisputed champion, because he's a 3-weight world champion. He skipped flyweight. But he's never been an undisputed champion. And I think as someone who's into the glory of boxing rather than just the money, I think Inoue would really like to be undisputed champion. Butler, just give up the belt. Don't fight Inoue, says Vin Lee. Why? You know, even if you think he's going to lose, even if you think it's only going to last 2 rounds, it's a huge event. It's something he can tell his future generations about. He can make a lot of money doing it. Why would you give the belt up? That would just be crazy. And then Inoue fights whoever the next person down on the rankings is. Butler's not for that. Butler's not for turning. He'll be keeping that belt until he forces Inoue to rip it from his waist. But we shall see if that happens, because I'm sure that fight will take place. Jerry Larks, where it should be Inoue versus Casemiro next. Casemiro, Butler, who in that can decide who is better to fight in? Oh, Casemiro versus Butler. Yeah, one Marcos 31. I get it. You're saying they should have like a playoff to see who's more worthy of fighting Inoue, but you've got to understand that Butler's been in line to fight Casemiro twice, and through no fault of his own, that fight hasn't happened. Now, I'm sure if Casemiro can prove to the WBO that he can still make 118 pounds safely, they'll mandate him to fight Butler. They'll put him back in that number 1 position. But the last 2 fights and the way they've been scuppered doesn't indicate someone who could safely make the bantamweight limit anymore. It might be time to just let that one go and understand he'll move up to super bantam, maybe win a belt there, and then he can fight Inoue or Butler, whoever comes out on top in that fight. But we shall see. I think I've talked for long enough now anyway. You can go back to the start of this video to see Paul Butler's immediate reaction live as we recorded it to Naoya Inoue's crushing rematch victory over Nonito Donaire. It lasted about a round and a half. Dropped him at the end of the first round with a right hand, and followed up with a left hook centered barrage that forced the fight to be over midway through the second round. Looked absolutely chilling. A rare, very early night for Donaire. Usually gets them done inside schedule, but this was an incredibly early one. Donaire, we wait and see. He's got nothing left to prove, but it's his decision whether to carry on or not. But for Inoue, as we've heard from Paul Butler, there's already been negotiations between the teams for an undisputed fight, and we hope that will be next. Thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you all soon.